Everybody good? Yeah. He's doing it. Yeah. Just let us know when you get it.
You guys prefer PDF, docs, anything?
Everyone good? I got it.
Sorry, just a sec.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Okay. Time we begin on my first word. C1 is 2 empirical defense spending turns up with who funding inside the existential bring for row 24. EU putting more funding towards defense unless row 2 acts an existential branch of more language can succeeding in addressing global health. App pushes over the brink, Gamma 3.5. Moves to Europeanization of nuclear force means additional stocks, 1/3 and thermonuclear had 10 billion euro per year, not including indirect costs. Who is crucial to pandemic preparedness, Q121. Who has played a key role in global health, early provided member state support during pandemics. Pandemic coming in 3 years, Miracle 21. A 7-year pattern is emerging another outbreak arriving in early 2028. Absent who extinction, pandemics are more deadly, Kim out 21. Certain diseases can affect all those in the human indicated that disease can lead to human extinction. The risk increases with the mobility threatening humankind. C2 is trust. EU is the global instrument to reaching the 2-degree mark by leveraging partnership, but diplomacy is key. Denson 25. EU helps return to America to the EU for international partnership that drive beyond the aim of the well below 2 degrees Celsius. EU can yield a global momentum successful and one trust. China's cooperation is uniquely key. We're at a tipping point. Job 416. Climate is a pivotal juncture. EU and China finding increasingly calming down. EU China dialogue effort. EU China memorandum of understanding crucial for a carbon neutral economy. Apple is the script. China sees the threat. Samuel 525. And nuclear sharing would only irritate and embolden revision actors like China. Nuclear power posturing upstarts climate cooperation. England 25. If the international community keep in with the 1.5 carbon budget states to reduce supply side restraint, nuclear deterrence practically locks in a degree of hostility that observes cooperation. Independently, when tensions rise, China resorts to restricting rare earth, destroying AF weapons and green tech, Blue 7-1. Rare earth restriction measures have become China's single most powerful tool in negotiation. China dominates rare earth, 9 pounds of rare earth, and every form of defense technology. After reaching 2 degrees Celsius mark extinction, Pierce 23. For every degree of warming beyond 2 degrees Celsius, roughly additional billion, that's what we call the human extinction. C3 is Iran. EU's capping escalation in Iran, progressing time though, Cameron 27-21. Iran held nuclear talks with the EU nations on Friday, new nuclear program on Friday. EU continued to work on a diplomatic solution to Iran. The EU is the best negotiator of the common understanding for L25. The EU is fostering peace between former enemies, granting mutual recognition, non-domination, gives the EU special relevance to the EU External Action Service EU Commission. After diplomacy, forcing Iran's hand, 24. The EU nuclear can become difficult to credibly defend the goal of the nuclear sharing agreement as long as but non-aligned countries. The EU successfully handled the Iranian crisis without new instruments. After diplomacy, Iran proliferates with the edge already, ACA 25. The Iranian nuclear crisis reaching a tipping point to take advantage of diplomacy is escalating. Iran threat to withdraw from the NPT and develop nukes. Iran's more than able to, 0624. Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium is moving forward the strikes to destroy little nuclear materials and are intact. Iran is highly fortified underground enrichment facility and production center. Israeli strikes cause drawn and extinction Avery 13. Israeli attack on Iran by escalating the global nuclear war. Pakistan enter on the side of Iran introducing nuclear weapons. Russia and China draw on oil nuclear weapons will be used. Radioactive contamination, damage, agriculture, famine, destroys the biosphere. C4 is escalation. Russia won't attack now. NATO is strong. The atmosphere mongering. Olden 25. NATO Russia and conventional airline and sea power with more modern equipment and better trained forces. NATO more diversion to deter Russia. Leaders sound alarms, domestic policies and strategic advantage. Justify defense and investments in diverting public attention. Ramping up defense spending. Regards telling the public cut the card there. Russia views nuclear sharing in the Baltic as existential and lashes out. DS25. Colonel Subsecretary said deployment control to work and Estonia allowed the island to wait and located uncomfortably close to this poses an existential threat. And moreover, app prompts Trump abandonment. Samuel 25. If French nuclear sharing will only irritate Washington, given that Trump has no cause of abandoning allies. Russia's own perception see the French return as ineffective. It's perceptual and Russia lashes out. Spec 118. If French were to make a promise to the EU, this by no means constituted a turn. Turns to the other side to actually feel the turn. And the French can come close to this impact and attempt by French to get a nuclear umbrella would immediately lead to a nuclear crisis. Retaliation isn't Russia's doctrine. Samuel 525. Asymmetry is doctrinal. Moscow's escalated de-escalate strategy. Returns cannot counter. France backs supports multipliers global trade on their network intelligence capabilities. Even small nuclear wars guarantees extinction of nuclear in 18. So the 1% of nukes explode tends to lower the earth's temperature, destroy the ozone layer, and agriculture and civilization. As a robust restriction of Russia. C5 is time travel. Affirming necessitates time travel to March. Argument 3-6. March 25th, France will extend its production of its nuclear arsenals to its allies, Macron said. That's because current French strategy is against a turn. Album 25. France has no intention of sharing nuclear weapons with the EU as long as the station the EU under agreements French have ambiguity. It's easy. JP23. Equation make time travel possible. He has the tools to bend space and time continuum with rotating lasers forming a time loop. Universe destruction. Bear 16. Time travel would destroy the universe. Whole galaxies will exist in reference that did not have them before. Events will turn accusal, going in loops, increasing the mass of the universe until it collapses.
I will send dog. Should be in. Yeah, you're all good.
Is it just straight pace?
Yep. Let me know when you're good. No, no. Everything good?
Give me 1 second, sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
You just keep going.
Yeah, I got you.
I'm good.
Okay, cool. We affirm contention when it's cohesion. There's multiple conflicts at 125. Countries are there's potential for large-scale conflicts. Experienced South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, the DRC, Syria is located in geopolitical competition. The European Union is losing global power. Unity is key. ESC 25. After facing successive crises, the Union entered decline. Absolves in two ways. First, state cooperation. A European nuclear deterrent requires greater cohesion. Vincente 24. And AND would necessitate deeper EU political cohesion through majority voting on security of core state cooperation and information sharing projects the image of unity. Camp 25. France would share nuclear-related information in common positions on deterrence, which would convey an image of unity. Defense cooperation is the linchpin. Bradford and Valisic 19. Security cooperation has become a proxy for political goal of European cohesion. When the EU is faltering in suffocating areas, defense remains popular among EU citizens. And Fiat ensures unanimity. European Council. The EU Council has to vote unanimously on a common security policy. Second is fighting Euroscepticism. Rising Euroscepticism prevents EU cooperation. Ripsada 24. Today we witness the rebirth of far-right politics in Europe. The various far-right parties share support for weakening the EU, and nuclear sharing is key to stopping Euroscepticism. Bradford 19. Defense cooperation counters the Eurosceptic narrative that the EU has ceased to care about voter concerns. 68% of respondents demand that the EU does more. Changes in public opinion change party agendas. Bucci Chad 24. Based on original data of party discourse and voter preferences in France, Italy, and the UK, results are the parties have adapted their positions to changes in public opinion. Unity is key to global credibility. European External Action Service 16 to engage responsibly with the world. Credibility is vital. The EU's credibility hinges on our unity. Also, independently defense investments boost credibility. European External Action Service 16 credibility is vital. Stronger union requires investing in security capabilities and necessary to respond to external crises. Build our partners' capacities and defense cooperation must become the norm. The EU has the potential to mediate conflicts. Genso 7. The EU has numerous assets that can make it an influential player in mediation, able to offer the carrot access to one of the biggest markets, the largest contributors of aid, the sizable pool of qualified and diverse personality, grounds for a number of hotspots. Otherwise, regional conflicts drawing great powers. Krasner 18. Regional stability, great power could lead to great power conflict. Great power confrontations are more likely in areas that are affected by civil strife, withdrawing major actors with vested interests. Great power war leads to extinction. Claire 25. Great power with threatened extinction. Accidents escalate tensions, cause leaders to decide they're better off fighting than negotiating nuclear weapons. Use famine caused by nuclear winter reaches extinction. Cut the card there. C2 is Turkey, Greece. Greece and Turkey are on the brink of conflict now. As this month, long-standing differences over sovereignty and aging, with Turkey promoting the Blue Homeland Doctrine and the ancient Greek maritime rights. There have been three acute crises with the risk of conflict in this context. Trump has not hidden his admiration for Erdogan and has shown he could well pressure Israel to maintain neutrality, depriving Athens of valuable strategic ally. Factors that increase the risk of war. Ceasefires called a de-escalation on the Kurdish front. Turkey reserves its military forces, increasing pressure on Greece. Trump has shown no inclination to curb ambitions. Turkish rearmament in the Asian continues to arm itself massively. Greece faces a perilous equation: the need for cool but decisive deterrence, planning for strengthening international alliances, for upgrading national power is now more urgent than ever. Nuclear sharing with Greece can benefit NATO and NATO security to deter Turkey. Cap is 21. Athens should be in favor of nuclear weapons as a proponent of French deterrent capabilities within the EU. This option would strengthen the alliance of nuclear deterrence pressure in the region while enhancing Greece's role in the Eastern Mediterranean. Military bases are strategically located in the Black Sea, the Balkans, and the Middle East. Erdogan will be shaking in his boots. Coloris 22 acquisition of nuclear weapons would serve the Greek interests, and so would provide undisputed most deterrence capability that's resulting in security problems of the Turkish revisionism with the coercive strategy Greece with the cost of war must be made unacceptable for Turkey. Weapons seal the Greek deterrence capability, particularly since France has sworn unconditional support to Greece. Coconut 22 France first support to Greece, so that Turkey provokes in the Asian. Macron said that we fully support the sovereignty of Greece in the fields of defense and security, referring to the increasing Turkish provocations in the Asian and the Mediterranean. Economic stakes in the Mediterranean escalate to global great power war. Ladner 20. China launches the area across the region. A U.S. agrees to hit military bases sighted China and Russia's the main targets. Discovery of massive undersea natural gas storage threatening the eastern Mediterranean. Increasingly threatening Italy beyond the control of powers involved with bitter rivalry for energy resources. Conflicts are becoming intertwined with inter-imperialist rivalries inside NATO. The fact that Greek and Turkish warships came close to a clash in the Asian this week is a warning towards the eruption of major regional or even global conflicts. Great power war is existential. Cross-applied killer that was read earlier. Yeah.
Ready to cross. You want to stand or sit?
You can sit.
Okay, cool. Can I take this question?
Yeah.
Just whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. So on your Great Power War impact on Turkey, if you're drawing evidence just because the great powers want like the oil in the region and it's important to them, like the resources.
That's one of the warrants.
Okay, thank you. What are the other ones?
Yeah, so there's a couple of warrants. One, they have economic interest in the area independent of energy. The second one is in energy. The third one is military bases, undersea natural gas reserves. There's a lot.
Can I go follow up?
Yeah.
So like they want the region to remain stable, right? Like the region is important to them.
The region is important to them, but there is no evidence that they have the ability to keep the region stable. Our evidence finds that the region is becoming unstable now.
You can take a question.
Okay, so let's talk about, let's talk about your first argument on the WHO.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the uniqueness evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Your evidence just says, let me just pull it up, give me one second.
You could.
Yeah. Okay, so empirically defense spending trades off with WHO funding and it's at a brink. Can you explain to me what piece of evidence says that like the EU is putting enough money towards like the WHO now?
Yeah, it says specifically the WHO faces an existential crisis that goes beyond the gap of the question. So
Wait,
what we'd argue, what we'd argue is insofar as they're like currently facing an existential crisis.
Wait, so they're facing an existential crisis in the neg?
Yeah, no, they're facing.
Wait, what?
No, they're
Guys.
facing an existential crisis right now. But we would argue that if you don't do anything, the EU will
You don't have
continue to
any
harm.
evidence that anything is being done right now. The negative is advocating for the status
The
quo.
Vora 24 evidence is pretty clear on the fact that even if they're facing an existential crisis, doesn't mean that
Wait, can
it's
you read me
existential right now.
can you read me the line of the evidence that says it's not existential right now? Because what I'm seeing is the WHO right now faces an existential crisis.
Yeah. It faces an existential crisis right now. That doesn't mean it's directly in the existential crisis.
Wait, what
it's
piece of
facing it,
evidence
it's in
says
front
that
of
the
them.
EU is solving the existential crisis right now? Can you please read the line?
Again, it's facing the existential crisis.
Can you read the
right
line of
now.
evidence that says the
And
EU makes sure it's
we're
true there's no
just going in
existential crisis
circles.
now?
We're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, okay, the
Can I
evidence
take
doesn't
a
say that. Yeah, you can take one.
So let's talk about your third contention on proliferation. Is your impact scenario just that Poland causes
Wait,
other?
Poland?
Yeah, Poland.
I read two contentions.
Oh, sorry. I just read off the top. My bad. Okay, let's talk about Turkey again, actually.
Okay.
So if you look at your evidence saying that like Turkey's on the brink right now, can you read me in your evidence where it said that they're gonna invade anywhere?
Sure. The evidence is pretty specific when it gives you the warrants as to why escalation is likely, which is probably synonymous to invasion.
How is escalation?
Yeah, long-standing differences over sovereignty in the Aegean, with Turkey promoting the Blue Homeland Doctrine, and then 3 acute crises with an increased risk of conflict. In this context, then it gives you a couple more warrants. Factors that increase the risk of war, explaining how there's a high risk of war right now, indicating that escalation is likely in this world.
Insofar as there's been these high risks between Turkey and Greece in the past, why have we never seen your impact?
There have never been this high risk. We give you 3 specific warrants as to why this situation is unique compared to any past example.
Alright, and I think that's cross.
Yeah.
We're gonna put a little bit of prep.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
we're gonna set that. Okay. Drop the doc. Just as an off-time roadmap, it will go 2 dias at the top, an overview, and then straight down their case.
It's gonna go 2 DAs at the top.
2 dias at the top. Yeah, you can take some more pictures.
What'd you say?
Is the overview on their case or your
You can do it on,
Do it on their case.
you can do it on their
Overview.
case, yeah.
Okay, wait. So there's
The DA is on our case, but the overview is on their case.
Okay. Wait, so go over the order again.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 2 DAs at the top. Those are on, you can flow them on our case, then overview on your case, and then straight down your case.
Okay.
Got it? Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Everyone good? Everyone got it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Wait, give me
Wait.
Oh.
Sorry. I don't know what document. Oh, okay.
We're good?
Wait, actually,
Oh.
we're gonna take a quick second. We're not.
Oh, okay.
missing
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's cool. You should be good to go now.
Okay,
2
okay, awesome.
seconds.
Okay, good.
Wait, I just have to.
Okay, no, you're good, you're good.
Okay.
Awesome. Awesome. First is multipolarity DA. The world is bipolar. IW313. Global world is now bipolar, dominated by the US and China. I've caused global multipolarity. Bando 325. If European governments stop the serious continental nuclear deterrent, Europe will look more like a third global power. So it will be global multipolarity. Multipolarity cooks deterrence calculus. Too many actors. Neuron 21. Multipolar nuclear deterrence while managing complex political relationships can be repaired. The result: cloud judgment and nuclear escalation. Second DA is cyber. French cyber is great. So who's 7-9? France has become a leader in cybersecurity as more and more creative firms provide infrastructure and information against changing cyber threats. Bigger systems seeking risk. Representative 23. And nuclear weapons systems become more advanced. They intrinsically become more vulnerable to cyber attacks. Allows Russia to collapse capabilities. IWS 23. Russia's cyber attacks can be employed to trigger a nuclear event. Attackers place incorrect information and taking control of nukes. On overview. First, understand all of their arguments for non-deterrence working. Insofar as nuclear sharing doesn't work, countries are more likely to prefer their own deterrence capabilities, therefore cohesion doesn't work. Also, their argument on Turkey literally relies on deterrence working to turn Turkey in the first place. Here's why deterrence doesn't work. First, Russia previously planned supporting Ukraine. Corporate 25. Macron talks about nuclear deterrent. Moscow dismissed the extremely confrontational Ukraine. Kremlin said France continuing the war. Macron's comes with a threat against Russia. Therefore, Russia escalates. AB 24. Putin's ready to use nukes. He wanted the rest of deepening involvement in Ukraine. With this nuclear war, Putin's prepared to use all means to protect against Ukraine. In line with country's security document, Moscow is prepared to use nukes. Secondly, Russia previously France nuclear stockpile on Zom deterrent. Constitution 25. France possesses 300 nuclear warheads. Russia has over 1,500. Russia has missile defense systems, eliminating a large portion of French attacks. France can, however, complete destruction. Third, Russia doesn't believe that France will retaliate. Cooking deterrent and mad. Logger 25. Is it conceivable that a state will risk its own total destruction to defend another state? The French said no. France will sacrifice spirits while also no answer exists for France to run such a risk. Fourth, France's doctrine is uniquely escalatory, killing deterrents and provoking launches. Lee 17. France has significantly changed its current posture, expand its arsenal to ensure its regularly. France will have the ultimate warning to rule out concept of escalation control, willing to escalate small coverage to the higher levels. The deterrence becomes very difficult, more vulnerable to preemptive strike launch on postures. 5. Jurisdictional challenges emerge post-half thumping NATO and French deterrence. Go show 25. France offering nuclear security guarantees to EU members. They're also NATO members could lead to complexities of rearm resolve, undermines broader strategic objective, command and control difficulties and discrepancies and threats between EU and NATO, fragment existing deterrence remains. On cohesion, first, non-unique EU cohesion helps. Parliaments have addressed challenges, post-states their evidence. ECU 715. Parliament strike the deal to better address current emerging challenges of the EU cohesion. Second, turn their link. The plan drives political and economic instability. Murray 25. A credible EU deterrent could take a decade to achieve a significant period during which Europe left about NATO will require massive investment in new capabilities, would add to a fraught European economic environment where countries are facing increased deficit and debt. The outcome will further political instability, therefore dividing cohesion and breaking cohesion on overall. Moreover, EU won't be able to mediate. They rise as a great power as per the multipolarity overview. Therefore, it just increases instability and increases crisis. Insofar as our evidence finds the EU is helping mediate conflicts due to their non-domination and not nuclear, and they're better at proliferating. We tell you that it's better to remain as non-domination than just another great power which emerges post-AF. Moreover, they literally read no scenario that happens beyond EU helps the entire world. They don't specify any specific scenario. On Turkey. First, something you need is very bad. First, there's no time frame. Secondly, it just says Turkey is escalating, but that doesn't necessarily mean war. Make them read a card that tells you war is going to happen. Second, also prefer empirics to the UN media. Theory 25. Over the years, the EU has made sincere effort to mediate talks between the two sides, aiming to arrive at an amicable solution in compliance with UN resolution to the EU principle. A, this means that UN will likely mediate again, and B, the conflict existed for years and no reason why it's different now. 3, conflict has existed before. A, it should have caused the great power drawing that they talk about. And secondly, their uniqueness for why it's unique now is horrible. Resources have existed for decades in the region. 4, Trump has been in office supporting Turkey since the start of his presidency, so her time frame is still cooked. But 5, there's no drawing. It doesn't say who wants to fight, why they were drawing, who, what, when, where, why. There's no answer. Also turn it, because if anything, they won't fight if there's resources. It definitely means it won't be nuclear because gas reservoirs. No internal link means zero offense. The argument is not functional. Yeah. I think that's it.
We'll take some running prep. We have to see. Okay.
The order is going to be a little confusing. It's going to first go the first DA, and then it's going to go the overview on our case, down our case, maybe like back to the second DA, and then their case.
Just sign.
Yeah.
Then you need to use this.
Yeah.
Alright, we got it.
Okay. Okay, wait, I'll take like a second more breath. Okay.
And by the way, the stuff is in here.
Yeah, okay. Okay, actually it's gonna go first DA, second DA, overview on our case, their case. Anyone not ready? Okay. On the first DA, they have not delineated which actors actually get aggressive. We're the ones who are delineating the actors that get deterred in the app world. That's why our scenarios are better. We'll just win that deterrence works. Also, this argument literally concedes that deterrence is effective in making Europe a stronger actor, which definitely kicks out of all of their responses on the overview, but I'll line by line them anyways. On the second DA, there's no evidence that says they have intertwined cyber into their nuclear weapons. Our link has conceded that France is going to share stuff on like nuclear maintenance and security, so it spills over on their warrants as to why deterrence plan fails. They say that the plan is going to be perceived as supporting Ukraine, but they've conceded that our evidence precedes Russia's response and finds that they're still deterred because they know that the risks outweigh any escalation. The second response they make is a stockpile is not enough, but they've conceded our evidence that finds the current nuclear weapons are going to Eastern Europe, and the warning shots are enough to deter Russia and prove that France is going to defend Eastern Europe. They say that Russia doesn't. Russia doesn't believe that France is actually going to support Eastern Europe. And remember, warning shots are what prove that France is going to support Eastern Europe. They say that France's doctrine is inherently escalatory, but as long as we're proving that it's enough to deter Russia because the risks outweigh any escalation, we're winning that argument. They say that it's not jurisdictional, but again, our argument is about the perception of the French deterrent working. So if we have evidence talking about Russia's risk calculus, that's enough. On the cohesion argument, they've conceded our uniqueness evidence that finds that the EU cannot project the image of cohesion to the entire world, meaning even if the EU actually has cohesion right now, there's still wars happening because other countries don't perceive it that way, which kicks out all the turns on Turkey. They say there's no time frame on this argument, but they've conceded our uniqueness evidence that says the war is coming in a few days, and all the warrants as to why that's true. They said the UN mediates conflict, but that was the past. They've conceded that the Kurdish ceasefire means that Turkey finally has the capabilities to actually act on their motives, which proves that the stars are finally aligning. They say that resources have existed in the past, but they've conceded no because they've been fighting the Kurdish war, and once the ceasefire exists, they have the resources to actually start the war. They say that Trump has been supporting since the start of the presidency, but we have 3 warrants, meaning the stars have finally aligned, which gives us recency on this argument.
Go back to the resources thing and say that great powers have other things than just
Just wait. Okay. They ask who actually gets drawn in our evidence, delineates China. They say that countries won't fight knowing that there's resources in the region. Remember, I are more important than like the like regional resources in the region, which is why like our evidence finds the war is happening. We have actual evidence. This is just an uncarded analytic. Go to their case. On the WHO argument, first, our defense spending is inevitable. Their evidence says European countries are spending now anyways on conventional capability. Also, this evidence is from 2024. Last month, NATO summit forced them to all spend more, but at best, it turns the arguments it's calming Europe with a credible deterrent stop useless conventional spending. But second, their uniqueness evidence literally says the WHO is facing an existential crisis now. This stumps their uniqueness and proves that their argument is not unique. Third, their court concedes that Trump is already cutting pandemic funding, so it should have already triggered their scenario. Also, their own evidence concedes nationalism and misinformation kills WHO effectiveness. Anyways, recut says nationalism and misinformation. Fourth, there's no extinction. Kim uses unrealistic assumptions about fatality. Okay, actually skip that response. Go to their C2. First, dealing with the argument climate extinction isn't happening. Weapon 23. Predictions of catastrophe have been made 35 years yet Earth refuses to lend evidence of existential risk. Scary projections are based on models, not trends. Models prove unreliable. Increasing levels of CO2 are not positive. Enabling photosynthesis. Human CO2 contributions are small compared to Earth's natural carbon cycle. The increase in CO2 started more than 5,000 years ago. Yeah, cut the rest of their responses. On their hidden link about China first, none of their evidence says that China actually cuts off the supply, and even if there's negotiations with China and the EU, now, like historically, China does a lot of greenwashing, which is why it doesn't matter. On Iran, first, their cards say that talks exist, but there's no word as to why it worked. It's empirically hasn't since 2015. Berman 25. The IAEA adopted a resolution declaring that Iran is in breach of its non-proliferation obligations for the first time since 2005. Iran had failed to provide information about undeclared nuclear material and activities at multiple locations. Skip to the next argument. On escalation, first. Ukraine makes Russia stronger. Conflict in months. Champion 25. Putin has capabilities to take on NATO 6 months for localized attack combat forces and twice as large exposure to Western weaponry allowed Russia to figure out Air Force intact. Russia's indifference and casualties had created latitude. NATO wouldn't have cut the card there. Also, turn the argument nuclear deterrence deters Russian aggression off in 25. France could forward deploy some nuclear missiles effective if they occurred in frontline states. Weapons in the Baltic region provide a warning shot capability, signaling that further aggression can provoke nuclear response. Cut the card there. This outweighs on empirics because empirically during Georgia, a lack of deterrence resulted in the escalation. On their next argument on like time travel. First, their JP23 says it's highly unlikely to happen during this lifetime, and their impetus that we've traveled into the future at a time at 1 second per second right now. I'll mark this off.
Okay, sure.
Give me a sec.
You're good. Take your time.
Okay. It's done.
Okay. Good for cross. Do you want to sit for cross, or do you want to stand up there?
Can we just sit for
Okay, sure. Awesome. Do you mind if I grab the first question?
No.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk about the argument on Turkey, right? You told me there's other reasons why great powers would draw in. Can you tell me what those reasons are?
Other reasons, for example, China has their BRI in the region, which is a lot of like economic investments and stakes, which is why they would be forced to draw in. That's what our evidence delineates. Can I take a question?
Sure.
Okay. Let's talk about the first DA you read about multipolarity. So if your evidence finds that if France creates a European nuclear deterrent, they would become a global superpower, doesn't that prove deterrence works?
No. Our argument is multipolarity. Since there's so many actors, it confuses deterrence calculus specifically. Our evidence finds that deterrence would actually not work in a multipolar setting because you're
But what
introducing
makes the word
27
multipolar?
multipolar.
Yeah, what makes the world multipolar?
Like 29 more countries having nuclear capabilities, or well, France has, so 28 more countries.
Wait, Yeah, so the bloc of Europe that now has a nuclear deterrent becomes as powerful as Russia, the US, and China.
No, that's not our
Wait,
argument.
if they're
Our
not equal, then
argument-
it doesn't become multipolar. That's your link.
Our argument is that multipolarity trumps deterrence. That's our argument. But I'll take this one. Okay. What was your first response on escalation? Ukraine. Something
Yeah,
about Ukraine.
Russia's getting aggressive in Ukraine right now, or is expanding beyond Ukraine right now.
Okay, why uniquely now?
Because they're winning the war in Ukraine, which gives them like, I don't know, the ego to do so. Can I take the question? Can I
Yes.
take the next
Yes,
question?
you can take the next question.
Okay, let's talk about this Iran scenario. So if negotiations between Europe and Iran are working right now, why did Iran just violate the NPT and continue to enrich uranium?
What evidence says this?
It's the evidence I read in rebuttal. Like the
Which one?
only piece of evidence that was read. In
the
response
top
to
one?
Iran.
Your evidence is from June. Our evidence indicates that once they did that, EU came in and was like, please don't do that,
No,
and they
your
walked
evidence
it
says
back.
that they've been doing negotiations for like
Yeah,
the past
prevented.
multiple years. What has changed?
No.
since
The
June? I don't
conflict.
think
No.
a post date really
It-
matters.
I mean, it does insofar as it's prevented proliferation, which is the PRIF evidence, which you has conceded that EU empirically does actually mediate.
Your link evidence says that if the EU can't do negotiations, Iran violates the NPT. My question is, why has that already happened?
No, our argument is Iran isn't developing nukes. Like that's just like straight up what they're not doing. They're not
Our
developing.
evidence says that they're enriching the uranium to build nuclear
Which
weapons.
evidence?
I'd say that means yes.
Which evidence?
The only piece of evidence I read in response
The
to
Berman
Yeah.
failed to provide information about undeclared nuclear material. Where does it say they're enriching?
Wait, what do you think the undeclared nuclear material is?
Yeah, they're not providing information. That it's a jump to say that they're enriching uranium when it says failing to provide information. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're
You can read
proliferating.
other evidence that
Well,
Iran is
that would be doing
enriching
second-
uranium.
yeah.
Yeah, no, but despite that, your link evidence says that Iran is going to violate the NPT. That's the consequence. They've already done that by doing this. Your link is already triggered.
Okay. That was cross.
Okay, we'll take some running prep starting now. Wait, flex prep. What was the turn on who?
That's a cross question.
No, we're doing
Flex prep. We're taking flex prep.
You guys.
I mean, it's on the dock now.
Okay, sure.
There's no turn on the dot.
If it's on
Then
the
it wasn't read.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Okay, let's prep. Okay, so order of my speech, I'm gonna address I'm gonna do the multipolarity DA real quick. I'm gonna head over to the convention we're going for, way, and then head over there. Okay. So, time. Everyone good? Okay. Time will begin on my first word. On that multipolarity they said that we concede deterrence, but no, what our evidence is that they're just viewed as a third goal bar. They don't actually have to have the deterrent in the first place. They just not concede deterrence. Head over to escalation. We're telling you that Russia's not attacking right now. NATO is not, and all their evidence is funded by biased defense lobbyists who want more funding, but affirming close the script of the Russian calculus due to three things. One, moving to the Baltic for season, existential threat, and therefore lashes out. Two, Trump pulled out of the EU, giving Russia an open ability to attack. And three, deterrence failed to Russian calculus, and French is weaker due to lack of force multipliers like global communications and surveillance networks. Therefore, Russia snipes. Even a small nuclear strike to destroy the ozone layer through radiation preventing farming, causing extinction. They tell you a couple of things here. All of them are bad. First, they tell you that the Ukraine has made Russia stronger, but our Holden evidence post-states and tells you that the evidence post-states and tell you that they're not going to invade, or now they will not invade because they believe that NATO is strong. But insofar as they've conceded the U.S. pulls out post-AP, that's when they actually go out and attack. Second, they tell you that, and also our Holden evidence tells you that any analysis telling you that Russia's going to invade right now is just fear-mongering funded by biased defense companies and biased lobbyists in the first place. So there's no actual reason as to why they just want funding, so they have to sell the public in the first place. That's why that happens. Second, they tell you that they can deter due to Russian aggression. Couple of things here. One, they've conceded the fact that that French deterrent isn't actually deterring because they don't have the global force multiplier that the U.S. does in the first place. But second, we would say insofar as they've conceded that it's an existential threat, this for sure up-layers any deterrence argument. You can break the clash right here. What we would tell you is an existential threat to Russia thumbs deterrence. In Russian calculus, this means that they don't do attack, they have a 100% chance of getting destroyed. Whereas if they do attack, they have at least a 1% chance of surviving. That's all deterrence they know. Then the Russian calculus is mine. If they do absolutely nothing, they're gone. They know they have to do something in order to try to survive as a nation. And at the end, head over to the Wang. What we tell you is one, we weigh on time frame. Our spec evidence is so clean and telling you that it's immediate, it happens immediately. We would tell you for carded evidence, a carded time frame weighing over high schoolers analytics. But second, we would tell you that insofar as our war happens immediately, in their best case scenario, their Turkey war, the conventional war has to attack first, which eventually spirals into the nuclear war, and the Turkish war isn't even immediately. We would say that the conventional war spirals into nuclear war, whereas in our scenario, we place nukes, they immediately respond with nukes. Insofar as we're winning time frame, it short circuits all of their arguments because it takes longer to happen. Also, we'll weigh a turn on their case. Head over there. What we tell you is one, they can see that the jurisdictional challenge is telling you that after you affirm, insofar as the NATO and the EU will have different jurisdictions on which conflict to handle. Thus, neither one will actually know which conflict to handle, running both of their deterrents mute. They tell you that they don't even respond to this in the first place. Insofar as the EU doesn't actually have a deterrent capability in the first place, they have no offense there. And looking at that onto Turkey, if there's no deterrence, there's no actual reason why Turkey attacks. But second, they've conceded Kai's analysis and rebuttal, telling you that insofar as after you affirm, all of these countries are going to have to spend all of their money on nuclear capabilities in the first place. And so that cooks their entire economy, which is really bad for them because one, insofar as it's economically unstable, that means that the countries are going to look towards themselves and not actually work together in order to form a deterrence which cooks them there. And second, they conceded that it actually takes 10 years in order for a credible deterrent to happen in the first place, meaning their time frame overall is cooked in the long run. And even then, head over to Turkey. One, they've conceded there's no actual warrant as an invasion right now. They tell you that Trump has been there for they tell you there's 3 warrants on why escalation's high, but in their evidence there's nothing about an invasion happening in the first place. And also the BRI has existed for years. There's no actual reason why drawing happens.
We'll take some running prep. I'll start that.
Sorry, can you push your computer back a bit?
Sorry?
Can you push your computer back a bit?
Yeah. Sorry.
Big deal.
Okay, we'll restart. seconds left. Order is gonna be
Which document?
like start out order. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Order is gonna be our case, or it's gonna start on the like stuff they said at the top of our case, then go to Turkey, weighing their case. Sorry, my computer is wait, no, sorry, we're gonna take another second of prep. You already typed it.
It's like skipping to the second.
Oh, you just hand me the document I asked.
Okay.
14. Okay. Everybody good? Start on the tournament. It started the first turn of the DX, and they tell the EU is not going to have a capability. There's not going to be deterrence. But the only thing that we need to prove to win our arguments is that France is going to be able to put nuclear weapons or tell Greece that they're going to put nuclear weapons there. And as long as they have the plans to do that, that is enough for us to win our scenarios and for them to put and for them to say that they're going to put weapons in Eastern Europe. Any other confusion argument they make literally doesn't matter. The only thing we need to win is that these two places specifically have nuclear weapons going or are projected to have nuclear weapons. The next thing they tell you is the countries will have spending are going to spend too much on nukes and won't have, so deterrence won't work. Again, the only thing we need to win is that Greece wants the nuclear weapons and that they are going to get and that they are going to get those nuclear and that they are going to be committed to getting those nuclear weapons. We do not need to win any other scenario other than Greece specifically, which is the warranting that they literally haven't done. At that point, go to Greece. Greece and Turkey tensions are rolling over. It's overriding Turkey's militarism. Trump favors Erdogan isolating Greece nuclear strength with Greece deters Turkey won't fight a war. The game win strength is NATO and anchors Frank to support with strategic bases rising takes over gas and our regional war spread into global conflicts. Risk nuclear warning stations their payment from nuclear winter. On this argument, they tell you a couple things. First, they tell you that it's going to take too long because 10 years to build up a deterrent. No, they've considered the AR argument is perceptual. As soon as you announce that Europe is going to share nuclear weapons with Turkey, or France is going to share nuclear weapons with Turkey, that is enough with Greece. That's enough to deter Turkey. The second thing they have conceded is that it won't take 10 years because France can just give their existing nuclear weapons to Greece. The next thing that they tell you is there's no warrant as to why there's an invasion. Now, every single warrant has been conceded out of the constructive speech. One, the war with on the Kurdish front just ended, so Turkey uniquely has the military capacity to start a war right now. The next thing that they tell you is that the BRI has been around for years, so there's no unique warrant. They've considered all the resource warrants, all of the imperialism warrants, and the BRI is uniquely ramped up right now. That's all the warranting that's been conceded as to why conflict is uniquely likely now. All of the warrants and escalation are conceded. Okay, on weighing. Since our uniqueness evidence and the extinction impact has been conceded as try or die for the affirmative because they've conceded that extinction is coming right now in the negative world, but also our argument links into theirs and short circuits it because if Greece and Turkey start a conflict, that means that NATO's Article 5 is automatically decked because there's two scenarios. Either one, Article 5 doesn't trigger and NATO's credibility is decked and Russia's invades anyway, or B, NATO forms into different regional blocks because they have to support Greece and Turkey in different conflicts, and that means that NATO's already going to be weak anyway, which takes out their argument because it's premised on really NATO and the US being perceived as weak.
It outweighs on probability because it's like actually disproving it.
Yeah. It probably is on probability because it's actually disproving NATO and the Article 5 treaty, which is what Russia is scared of to begin with, is probably more severe than their argument. On their time frame, Wayne, it takes a lot of time for the US to withdraw from Europe because they have to move all their infrastructure, which takes months, and bills have to be passed to do so. Our scenario happens now in a few days. The uniqueness is conceded. China gets involved in the second the war breaks out because of their stakes, which also instantly draws in the US to nuclear war.
Respond to the short circuit.
Yeah, and on their short circuit, there's no time frame on the short circuit because our link is perceptual with the commitment that France makes to Greece. All right, on their case. We're gonna, on their case, we're gonna go for the argument that they have conceded. They literally put themselves in a huge double bind. First, they tell you that Russia is aggressive right now per their uniqueness evidence, but then they say Russia is going to escalate because it's an existential. They need to decide whether Russia is an offensive actor or a defensive actor. You cannot have both worlds. This argument is inherently contradictory, and they probably read terminal defense to their own argument. The weighing is probably the easiest place to sign your ballot.
Okay. Good for granted. Okay. So,
Wait, okay. What was the last response to double line?
Okay, so you're making the argument that Russia is getting aggressive because NATO is withdrawing, meaning they're an offensive actor that responds to deterrence. Wait, that's literally your
No,
uniqueness.
we said
You said it in summary.
Our uniqueness is that Russia's not going
Oh,
to attack
right. Your
because
link is
Because
that
NATO
NATO.
deterred.
Because NATO did.
Yeah,
That-
affirmative
Yeah.
is used for.
And then you make the argument that the nukes become an existential threat, which
Yeah.
causes the escalation.
Yeah.
Either Russia is an offensive actor and reacts to deterrence, which is why they're not getting aggressive now, or Russia's a defensive actor, meaning Russia should be aggressive right now because NATO is in the region. region. Like, you're making two
No,
contested claims.
it's not two contesting claims. We can both agree that Russia can't just be encapsulated by this whole like, oh, they're an offensive realist, oh, they're a defensive realist. Russia reacts based on what Russia wants in the first place.
Sure,
So we
I'm
would say,
confused.
so we would
I'm
say,
confused.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
confused.
yeah.
Is military power deterring Russia or aggressing
We would
Russia?
a couple of things. One, we would say that NATO's power deters Russia, but we would say that French
Also,
nuclear power,
yeah,
since they lack the
it's
force
nukes that's
capabilities that like
specific.
allow us
Why
to-
does it become an existential
Because
Yeah,
threat?
because it's placed so close to the
Because it's
Baltic.
Wait, so then you're saying it's escalatory, not deterring.
It's-
It
no,
was
no,
based
no,
on
no, no,
the
no,
type of
specific.
claim.
It's a couple of things. One, it's nuked specifically towards the Baltics. It's existential since it's so close to their territory. And two, we would still say that the French deterrent isn't viewed as credible because it lacks the force multipliers that the U.S. has. Can we get a
Wait, so
question?
Yeah, you can take a question.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about like this whole like time frame analysis. You
Yeah.
tell me that you outweigh on time frame because your link is perceptual, right? But
And our-
but insofar as like not looking at like the link and the actual like impact scenarios, which is your impact
Right.
scenario like perceptual? Like when's the actual
and then
time frame?
our warranting is that our impact scenario happens before your link does. We give you warrants in summary as to why your link takes a really long time to trigger because the U.S. has to spend a lot of time withdrawing for Russia to escalate. There's a million different things that have to happen, but the issue is our link is perceptual and our impact happens comparatively faster than yours.
But insofar as you've also conceded our other link telling you that Russia immediately attacks because they view it as an
Right.
existential threat to
But
them,
your
how
link
does
is
it's
data
dependent on
withdrawal,
withdrawal.
right?
It's
And we
not-
need a bunch
no,
of
that's not
warrants.
right.
It's not
That's not
necessarily.
That was how it was extended in summary.
We gave you three
There's
extensions in
four
summary.
links.
There's
two of
three
them.
links. One of them is that the U.S. pulls out because they feel offended. That's also perceptual, we would argue, insofar as you can say like the French thing is perceptual. But two, we also talk about they placing it in the Baltics as an existential threat. So like insofar as it being put there is an existential threat, so they attack immediately. Also, they like lack.
Wait, so why does it matter if your scenario happens faster than ours?
Yeah, so insofar as our scenario happens faster than yours, it short circuits your entire argument
Wait,
because
you
it's
need to
insofar-
prove that your extinction scenario happens before our link triggers to get
Yeah.
a short circuit.
Yeah.
Right,
We
because
would
you have to
argue-
prove
we-
that
we would
everyone
argue-
is dead
okay,
before we
yeah.
can solve,
We
right?
would argue a
But our
couple.
link is
We would argue a
perceptual.
couple of things. One, we would say that our link triggers the second that you affirm. The second that you affirm, and Russia views it as an existential threat, they immediately attack. And while your link, you still have not really given us a time frame as to when Turkey's
Wait,
going to
like
attack.
it's conceded that Turkey is going to start the war and
It's-
escalate in the
it's-
next few
it's-
days. That's been unique.
That's
It's from
not. It's not
constructed.
conceded. Your card says literally nothing about invasions. It's
Every
just
single word about
escalation.
escalation likely is an invasion. Like I'm not sure what the difference is.
Okay. I'll be with that.
Okay, yeah, we're good.
Okay. Okay. It'll go escalation wing. Sorry again? Turkey? Yeah. Escalation wing Turkey. Everyone good? Awesome. They have to see that Russia won't attack right now due to things like NATO deterrence. But when you're from, we're going off first, like, what happens when you're from is that it's an existential risk to Russia. Insofar as you're moving nukes close to Baltic, you say it's an encroachment on their territory. Therefore, they lash out and preemptively strike. All that has been conceded. They've only responded to our other list, but extend this one. Insofar as Russia preemptively strike, as per our Whitman evidence, that's enough to cause the ozone layer to destroy as extinction. They only give you one response at the end. They tell you we're in a double bind, telling you it's reactive versus offensive. We'll break the clash here. Remember, what we tell you is that NATO-specific conventional deterrence works as per uniqueness, but nukes specifically in the Baltic is encroachment on their territory, which is why it's existential threat towards them. The link impact scenarios all be conceded in the round. But let's go to the time frame rank specifically. They're definitely not winning here. First, our time frame is the only one that's card and tells you it's immediately. Even if you give them their few days evidence, they still concede that our argument is immediate, our existential threat specifically. Secondly, insofar as time frame, up layers, everything else, insofar as it short circuits their impact scenarios, that means all of their link-ins don't matter. Insofar as time frame upweights them in the first place. Also, up layers try to die because you can only die once, not die twice. Also, they have conceded that even if their link scenario happens perceptually, their internal link definitely does not happen perceptually. Insofar as they've conceded Ben's analysis draw in actually takes time. It takes time for these other actors to come into the region. Yeah. And definitely their impact scenario takes time as well. Go to their case. They have lost the round when they've conceded the NATO-EU jurisdictional challenges. They emerge pro-staff. Insofar as we from jurisdictional habits between what conflicts each side mediate, therefore they're going to debate on end without deterrence actually working. They try to tell you they only need to win, the nukes are moved there. No, insofar as the nukes are non-function, deterrence doesn't work, then Turkey won't actually feel scared. Therefore, Turkey will attack post-staff. This is 100% conceded.
Also, on their Turkey link specifically, they have conceded banned analysis that insofar as nukes takes 10 years to build in the first place, the uniqueness definitely overwhelms the link insofar as it's like 3 days from now. Also, they have conceded that insofar as countries are economically unstable post-app, insofar as investments work, they look inwards on their own deterrence policies, not nuclear sharing policies. All of this has been conceded.
We'll take the remainder of our prep. Take 7. Community assumptions.
Yeah. Okay. The order is going to be Turkey, Greece, and then the weighing debate. Is anyone not ready? Okay, perfect. Extend the Turkey argument. Greece and Turkey tensions are boiling over sovereignty and Turkey's militarism. Trump favors Erdogan isolating Greece nuclear sharing with Greece deters Turkey won't fight a war they can't win, strengthens NATO and anchors French support with strategic bases and rising stakes over gas and PR. Regional war could spiral into global conflict, risk nuclear war, extinction through famine from nuclear winter. All of their responses were extended the ring. Let's go down the list. The first thing they say is there's jurisdictional challenges, but they have conceded the plan is already in place for France to give Greece nuclear weapons. It doesn't matter if there's other jurisdictional challenges and our link triggers in the app. They say that the EU doesn't have the capabilities to do deterrence. Again, all we have to prove is that enough nukes go to Greece to deter Turkey. That is the only scenario we need to prove, which our link evidence does. They say it takes 10 years to build up nuclear capabilities. Again, our link evidence says that there are enough capabilities put in Greece so that France doesn't need to build them up. This plan is already in place. It happens. None of these responses are responsive to our link. They say that countries look inward, which prevents effective deterrence. Again, it's not specific to Greece, who is facing an existential threat right now and will always take the EU to the French nuclear weapons. Then go to the weighing debate. On their meta weighing about how time frame uplayers our arguments, they just make the argument that it short circuits our link, but that what they have to win is that their impact scenario takes place before our link does, but our link is perceptual. It's about the commitment that France is making to Greece to deter Turkey and that they'll support them nuclearly if Turkey gets aggressive. That is definitely not a short circuit to our argument. Then there's no other warrant as to why time frame actually matters, which is why our link is the best. Our link is the best place to vote in this round. Remember, if there's a Turkey-Greece conflict and it either disproves NATO because countries don't get drawn in, or NATO only supports one country, then it disproves all of NATO, which causes their deterrence scenario about the U.S. or their escalation scenario where the U.S. pulls out and that causes extreme Russian escalation. This outweighs on probability because it's literally disproving the entire treaty, which is the only way to break the clash in this round. Since instead of their uplaying warrants actually respond to our weighing. Then go to the time frame debate. They have conceded our link at our impact scenario is also extremely fast because the war starts in a few days because of the 3 warrants we've listed as to why war is extremely likely right now, and China gets drawn in as soon as the war starts because they want to protect their economic interests as soon as possible. Even if we don't have a card in it, the analytic was conceded. It's a wash on the time frame debate. They just say that our internal link takes a lot of time, but as long as countries just start launching nuclear weapons, they've conceded the analytics. It's a wash on the time frame. We're winning our wing. You can go there.